Well, my family and I have one of your books for children on our shelf, God Made All of Me. And so we have really appreciated this book. It's been a great one to read aloud with our children and open up conversations. And one of the things I love about the book is that it really roots a child's understanding of the value of their body in who they are as humans created in God's image. And so can you tell me a little bit about, why you wrote this book?
I'll go first. I'll do the. So what ends up happening is Lindsay, when we were dating, I was the seminary professor at the University of Virginia, and she was the case manager. So I emphasize some of the research justifying why we're doing this, and she advocating and doing all the creative and kind of the care for the survivor type of stuff. And I've learned from her. So I'm going first only because the stats kind of set the reason, and there's more reasons than that. But the big one, if you think through, well, we wrote a book called Rid of My Disgrace about 10 years ago, and that was for survivors of sexual assault. And the numbers there are staggering. There are 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men are or will be survivors of sexual abuse in their lifetime. And so the purpose of this is to try to prevent that from happening. We want people to not have to read that book about hope and healing because that's not their experience. So the first thing is just preventative, because 1 in 5 children will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. That's the statistic that is, and that's not, we're not being dramatic. We're not pumping those numbers up. It's probably worse than that. And so we actually put very conservative numbers on that. And this is important for your audience because many people in your audience will be thinking that they're safe. Things are different because of, and they might be a little bit more or less just because there's just less interaction with certain people that they assume would be dangerous. I don't know what the statistics would be, but the statistics across the board are 34% of perpetrators are family members. 58% are known to the child and family. Only 7% are strangers. And so the rationale many people are thinking is, oh, well, I mean, our family's safe and our circle's safe, and it's all those strangers. Well, they don't have that as many interactions, perhaps socially, just because if you're homeschooled, you're not usually with a bunch of other kids and families all around. And so there's a slight minimization of the interaction, but that's not the threat. The threat is not strangers, people out there. Is someone who's known to the family or in the family. 93% are family members or friends or acquaintances, known, trusted acquaintances of the family or the child. So those are the big ones. The other major thing is that parents are frequently worried about fire safety, swimming safety, traffic, biking safety, and a whole bunch of other things. We live in Florida. And so when we moved here, one of the first things I moved back here, but when we moved here, our children were 3 and 5. They were taking swimming lessons to make sure. So swimming safety, what do we do if there's a fire? And how do you cross a street? And so the book is to do personal safety. That's the languages, because we don't want children to feel scared. So like, hey, mom and dad, why are we reading this book? Well, we want to talk about personal safety. And so it minimizes, it's not leading with fear. And so that's the big reason, is to minimize, because there's a huge problem that's not being discussed. The other reason is because we had children at the time, and Lindsay was looking around and kind of leading the charge on different books that were age appropriate. And we had a pile of them, and we noticed that there was something missing. There was a Christian book that uses scripture, Christian language, and categories to talk about body and threats and so just to frame the whole conversation. So Lindsay just said, well, we'll just make the book. So I don't think like that. I mean, that's how she thinks. I make things that exist like really good or better. She creates things out of nothing. So she thought, let's create this book, and then it went from there. So what are other reasons are there other reasons you can think of, hon?
Sure. I mean, definitely those are all big ones. Like Justin said, there really wasn't anything on the market that I felt comfortable saying, I would want to read this with my kids or pass on to somebody else. And around the time our kids were 2, 3, and 4, one, they're asking questions. And I kind of saw within our friend group, nobody really was having these conversations. And so I'm trying to figure it out, because I had been working in these roles with adult women who were victimized when they were children. And kind of the general feedback was, nobody ever talked to me. Nobody ever educated me. Nobody ever protected me. Nobody ever listened to me if I did disclose. There just was no empowerment, and how devastating that was for them, in addition to the shame and the guilt and the blame and all those emotions. And so it really made me think, my goodness, like it's this model they talk about in public health where you've got to go upstream. Like you've got this problem downstream, but let's go upstream and figure out like, why do people keep falling in the river? And I hate the bully, and so I'm like, the bully is these perpetrators. And I'm like, if we can get ahead of these perpetrators and educate thousands of children to be able to name their body parts and call it out, or know who to talk to, who are some trusted adults that they can disclose to, how amazing. Like my work is done on earth if we can do that. So we found that parents weren't having the conversations. They were worried about, if I say it wrong, I'm going to mess it up. And just like avoiding it altogether. And so I feel like this book is such a great foundation that then you can have further conversations that aren't going to be weird. It's weird to sit your kid down at 13 and have all of the talks, between body safety and, sex awareness, and then throw in relationships and healthy relationships. Like you've got to start small, one, because their attention span is small. And then it establishes such trust in the sense of like, our girls know that we talk about these things. They talk to us about, questions or any areas of concern they have. And it's not perfect at all. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you do all these things and you're 100% protected. However, it does mean you're putting in such a foundation of open conversation, where we're telling them, over time, as it's developmentally appropriate, we're telling them the truth. So when they hear something at school, they're like, that is definitely not right, from their peers. Or if something uncomfortable happens, then we're going to be able to intervene right away. That's our hope. And it's the same thing. We wear our seatbelts. They're not foolproof. We teach, swimming safety, like Justin said. We teach our kids every lake has an alligator in Florida. It's not foolproof. However, it is building such kind of a force field that it reduces the vulnerabilities significantly by having these conversations. So that was the reason we found people were not having them. Even to this day, I'm like, you have a 15-year-old, you've never had this conversation, like start with our book. It's going to be a little bit awkward, but here you can go. And so it's a tool for parents to hopefully mitigate some of those awkward conversations because you're reading. And we found that with our girls was really helpful by just cuddling up on the couch and reading the book. And so they call it the body book. That's what they termed it. And they were like, you're going to read the body book again. But it works. It does. It has provided such appropriate language for talking about these topics.